It's a new project here. This is obviously the second week. Last week, we got together with Brendan McKay out of Maryland, Matt Burkhead in Arizona, and Nathan Nottingham, the COO of Vetted VA, was here, and we walked through the loan estimate and everything that you need to know when you're buying or refinancing a home about that loan estimate. So if it's something you're interested in, you can obviously go back, check out last week's show. But we're back with a new group of experts this week. And what we're going to be talking about is something that's really big and really popular, or really important in the current market, is getting VA offers accepted. Anyone that's out there writing offers, trying to get a home under contract, knows most homes are seeing multiple bidding situations, and some sellers and their agents may look at VA loans in a less positive light than conventional or other types of financing. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the reasons why that may be and what your realtor and your lender can be doing to overcome that. Last week, like I said, Nathan was here with us, and he did a great job of giving us the 5 to 7 minute overview of what Vetted VA is and how the group can help you. Most of you are familiar with posting your questions to the group, and we get text answers, some of the video answers. So what we want this here to be is a forum where you can show up and get your questions answered live. So if you have a question, post them in the comments. After we get through the first part of the show, where we're just going to have a group discussion, we will get to any and all questions over there. I'm going to give you the 1 or the 2 minute overview of what Nathan went through in great detail last week of who these folks are and how they got here before we actually introduce them. So every vetted professional in the group, it's not something where you just push a button and say, hey, I'd like to be in this group. You apply. There's a vetting process, which involves a pretty rigorous open book test. And then from there, you can progress through the ranks. We'll tell you what everyone's ranks here. And basically, how you progress is time spent in the group, commitment to the group, taking on additional responsibilities, and basically helping members each week. So if you want to know more about that, you can go back to last week. But with that, let's go through who we have here with us. We'll start with Diana Dominguez. She is a VVA4. She's a realtor with Aspire Realty Group in Little Rock, Arkansas. Anything else you'd like to add to that, Diana?
No, I'm just super pumped to be here. I'm ready to get started and talk about all of this. Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. It's just a better forum to me. Text can be kind of one-dimensional. So with this, where you guys can go so much deeper into detail of all the topics. So as we said, Diana's on the real estate side. On the lending side, we have Michelle Dugan with MS Lending in Madison, Mississippi. She's a VVA5. Obviously on the lending side. Anything else you'd like to add, Michelle?
I don't think so. No, super excited to be here and just get to chat with everybody and have a little one-on-one time, I guess.
Perfect. And then our final guest tonight is Vic Malone. He is a VVA4 lender at Peak 7 Mortgage in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Vic, you were telling us you're getting some cold weather out there.
A little bit icy, a little bit of snow coming on, but hey, glad to be here.
Absolutely.
Let's go.
So we've got the map covered. We've got California, Arkansas, Mississippi, Colorado. So geographically, we've got you covered. We've got both the real estate and the mortgage side. So with that, why don't we jump into tonight's topic of tips for getting your VA offer accepted in today's market. So starting there, any of you guys feel free to jump in. Where I always like to start this is, why is it that some sellers and or their agents look down on VA offers or don't look at them as being as equivalent or as desirable as a conventional loan? Diana, you have any thoughts on that?
I think a lot of it is misinformation. Some agents have not been exposed to VA loans and have not gone through those transactions. And I think it's a lot of misinformation of the appraisal. Some of them think that, there are extensive repairs, which is not necessarily the case at all. So I felt like we as professionals in the industry need to support the VA loan in educating fellow professionals that are not as proficient, with the lending process and the appraisal process and how it all goes.
On that topic, a lot of it does, to me, seem to relate back to the fact that the VA loan is unique. It's really the only zero down program that we have. And a lot of veterans can get in with no money down, and some of them get in with a lender credit and truly have little to no money. And it relates back to that appraisal. So any of you guys, Michelle, why don't you kind of walk us through the difference between a VA appraisal and an appraisal on a conventional loan or an FHA loan, and what that might mean to a seller and their agent?
Sure. So typically on a conventional loan, most of those are looked at as is. So whatever state the property is in, unless it is in, there's something majorly wrong with the property, you're typically not going to see anybody come back and ask for repairs on a property. They're just going to assess the property as it is in the condition that it is and give you a value based on that. For the VA, and also sort of similar to an FHA loan, they're going to go in and look at what they call minimum property standards for the properties, or minimum property requirements rather. And with those, there can be repairs and such that might come up. Most of the time, any repairs that are required are typically going to be something that would impact the health and safety of the home. And at the end of the day, truly, it's better for the borrower, because it's going to make sure that the home that they're moving into is not going to put them in some sort of situation where it's going to make them sick, or it's going to injure them by, being on their own property that they live in. So it's definitely not designed, the appraisal is not designed to make it harder to get a loan or to make it more difficult for the seller or the buyer. It's truly looking at the better intention of serving that borrower so that they're getting into a home that is safe for them, that it's not going to, cause them health problems. It's not going to bring up issues in the future. So there are a lot of sellers that can be a little apprehensive when it comes to that, because they're worried about what kind of expenses they're going to have to pay out of pocket. And truth be told, most of the time, if the seller refused to pay, for those repairs, then the veteran could pay for the repairs to be done. You can have the repairs escrowed. You could have options where money is put aside and the repairs are done even after closing. So there's a lot of different options that are available for veterans, and that's sort of similar to an FHA loan as well, in that sense that when these requirements are presented by the appraisal that have to be done for the home to meet the minimum property requirements, there's more options than just the seller simply coming out of pocket. I've seen agents that went out and painted homes to make sure that they, met the minimum property standards. I've seen people go out and replace a door or a window just to be able to get the loan to closing. So typically, I do feel like a lot of the parties that are working on these, especially when you're working with local agents and local lenders, if it came down to it and my borrower couldn't get a loan because there was a window that wouldn't shut properly, then I'd be calling somebody in my family like, hey, you need to go over to this house and make sure that this window can close properly. So there are a lot of options besides just the seller coming out of pocket. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, it's for the betterment of the borrower at the end of the day. So
Josh, let me kind of throw in something there. Those minimum property requirements, if you actually look at them in the VA manual, they are not that onerous.
They're not.
You can't have exposed wiring. You can't have a leaking plumbing. You can't have peeling paint. And so when I talk to listing agents and I'm presenting a VA loan, I always compliment their house. I'm like, they're like, well, the VA loan has all these property requirements. I'm like, I know those are some, things on the south side of town, but I know that your listing is, top of the line. That's not an issue with that, because if you actually look at them, I don't think your listing has leaking piping, exposed wiring. And generally it doesn't, and that really eases them off and makes them feel like they've got a higher end, which generally they'll hopefully see that they have that, and that really pushes it along. And the other thing on the VA loan, the VA appraisal is those timelines of when they have to be done are written down. So for Colorado and El Paso County in particular, now it matters on what county you're in and what state you're in. But for my county and the ones around here, it's 7 days. So if I order appraisal day Tuesday, next Friday, that thing's going to be due. Okay, or actually next Thursday, that's due. And so I can say, hey, I'll get that loan closed in 14 days, or and so having control over that. Whereas on a conventional appraisal, it's whenever the appraiser wants to turn it in.
Mm-hmm. And Vic, that's an important part of that conversation, that it's different. When we order an appraisal on a VA loan, we're not going to an appraisal management company. It's not some third-party intermediary. We are literally going to the VA. The VA is going to assign that appraisal. They're going to be responsible for the timelines. And we also have certainty there in that they post the schedule of, this is what this property in this area gets charged. So there's actually, again, some certainty there. Diana, anything that you wanted to add on in terms of the appraisal process and on listings or a buyer that you're representing, how you sort of negotiate and navigate that process to make sure the other side understands that it's almost a better process than other types of appraisals?
Yes, I agree. So Michelle was talking about, how some of the repairs may just be, very minor, such as painting something. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone out there taking the paint, with seller's permission, of course, and the agent being in the know that this is happening. And as long as the seller was okay, we just went over there and just took care of it, and that was it. I mean, it was very minimal. We're closing deals on time every day. So I felt like, the concerns that, most listing agents have really are just based on, fear, of not getting something, go over, it's just not getting something approved by the VA, but it's really just like Vic said, they are just very minimal and focused on health, safety, and the home being structurally sound, which should be to begin with.
On that topic of appraisals, a unique thing, not just to VA loans. VA and FHA loans have an escape clause where something really common in this market is what buyers want to do is say, I'll waive my appraisal contingency, I'll cover any gap. And we can't really do that on VA loans. Does one of you guys want to address that and kind of explain to everyone what it is and how we can, to a degree, work around that, or what best practices are for working around that with a seller who's concerned that a VA buyer is not going to be able to waive that contingency?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think that I get this objection all the time. Well, it's a VA loan; it's not going to appraise. Well, I feel like the comps are the same, regardless of whatever loan you use. The comps are the same. The market dictates. The buyer is going to pay whatever they want to pay. Now, of course, we cannot waive that appraisal, but the buyer can definitely do an appraisal gap. Now, we can put a cap on the appraisal gap. We can cover the whole thing, and not having that down payment, that benefit really helps a VA buyer to be able to put that money towards an appraisal gap to obtain that home, which, right now the market is just so sought after and so fast moving. You almost have to, and you have to put your best foot forward. I tell all of my clients, we may not get a choice or a chance to, we may not get a counter. We may not sometimes we might not even get a response. So we have to put our best foot forward. And they are sometimes with first time home buyers, which is probably most of my market. They are a little bit scared once they understand the protection that they have also, with the VA loan, and they say, okay, well, we're going to look at our finances. We're going to look at what we can offer the seller, put our best foot forward, and see if we can try to win this home.
If I can throw that in there, really the only thing on the VA loan is that there's no timeline on that. If I do conventional appraisal and it comes in 5,000 under, or you can't 10,000, whatever under, and you can't come to agreement, you can terminate on appraisal. There's just a deadline in the contract that's pretty far into the contract. The only thing the VA appraisal clause does is there's no timeline on that. There's no specific date on that. And the vet can back out on that. So it's not a whole lot different, except that the conventional just has a date after which you can't do that anymore. And so I kind of emphasize that too as well. I mean, my clients, they want to buy a house. You got a seller wants to sell it. We're going to come to some agreement as long as everybody's reasonable on this. And a date in a contract isn't going to really affect that, because, by the way, I'm gonna be there 2 weeks before that date in the contract.
Well, Vic, along those lines, why don't you walk us through, if we have a conventional loan, the appraisal comes in low, we find out when the appraisal gets delivered and you go, awesome, right, I've got a $5,000 or $10,000 low appraisal. Tell us a little bit about why the VA process of handling that is what it is, and how it's better for everyone involved than a conventional loan.
Great question, Josh. Yeah, that's what's called the Tidewater. The Tidewater in the VA, it came out of Tidewater, Virginia. And so if the appraiser goes and does the appraisal, and remember, he's only got 7 days here. I don't know, Michelle, how much you got, 10 days or—
We're 8 days.
What's that?
We're 8 days here in Mississippi.
Yeah, 7 days. Some parts of Colorado it's 10 days, but it's still a very short period of time. And so the appraiser goes out there, he looks at the house, and he will send a notification to me that says, hey, I looked at this house. I cannot support the value that the contract's at. I'm issuing a Tidewater on that. What the Tidewater tells me is, hey, I've got 48 hours to come up with some comps that support the value of the contract. So what I do, I'm not a realtor. I take that and I'm the quarterback. I give that to the listing agent, to the selling agent, and I tell them, hey, the appraiser's in there, can't find value. How did you determine the value of this house? Can you send me the comps? They send those to me. We kind of look them over. We pick the best 3, and then we send those in to the appraiser. And then the appraiser has something that shows what the value is. I just had this well, that might get into the next topic is what happens if they don't take that.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is the only appraisal that the VA appraisal is the only appraisal that gives you that opportunity. If a conventional appraiser can't find the value, you don't find out until they finish the report. They turn it into the appraisal management company, which I can't even talk to the appraiser. And then they take it. Takes them a day to get it. Then they send it back to them because there's a problem in some database field, that they have to get fixed. And then when it finally comes back, it goes straight to the borrower, and it's several days later, and then that's when we first find out that the appraisal might be low and that there's a problem. And so there's no way to head it off. There's no way to have any input into it. And so this is a much, much better process, both before the appraisal comes in, and then you'll probably ask the next, lead that to the next question about the reconsideration of value afterward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so one thing that I like to point out, I don't know how often it comes up for you guys. Appraisers are in a tough spot in a rapidly appreciating market like this. And for the most part, they do a pretty good job of keeping up with the values, not bringing them egregiously low. But what I can say on the VA side, I think in the last 18, 24 months, I've only had 2 where we've got called out on Tidewater. And both of them, with the information that we gave them, were able to bring in the values. Michelle, Vic, what you guys experience, and Diana as well, when you're seeing this called in, to me, it seems like we're more likely to get closer to our value or our value with Tidewater than we are with having to rebut an appraiser who already told us, this is my value, deal with it.
I agree. And I think it's, having the 3 different opportunities when you consider that reconsideration of value at the end versus a conventional where can you submit and say, hey, why didn't you use this, comp, or why didn't you use that comp? You can submit those, but they're not obligated to change anything. They don't have to, do anything different on the appraisal at that point. The VA appraiser has to consider these, other comparable properties that were considered in coming up with the value for that home when they're doing their report. So they can't just ignore them. Like, it literally has to be contained within the appraisal report that's submitted. So, there's a lot of misconception that VA appraisals come in low, and honestly, it's just simply not true. I feel like the voices that are still putting that information out there they just don't know. They either haven't been through the experience of dealing with Tidewater or a reconsideration of value and had them be successful, or dealt with it within the last 4 to 5 years, especially. And honestly, I think it's just a misinformed, parties, whether it's the agent or the lender. There are some lenders that just simply don't even know what Tidewater is if they're not familiar with VA lending. And so you don't have another loan product that is comparable when it comes to the VA loan to get your value met.
And one of the things, if I can throw on there, Josh, the VA appraisers, at least here, I mean, they really want to do those VA loans and stay on there. So a VA appraisal in Colorado here is $800. A conventional one is about $600, $650, of which the appraiser might get $350, $400, after the appraisal management. They're getting twice that number. So they want to stay in good with the VA. Here's the other thing. I have an 800 number. I can call the VA Regional Loan Center up in Denver, just 70 miles away. And if there's any problem with the appraisal, I can talk to the appraisal department up there, the evaluation. And later on, if I do a reconsideration on anything, the appraiser doesn't get a second chance on it. He had it when he had the Tidewater, when he turned the initial report. When I do a reconsideration, that's going straight to the VA, and they're the ones that are doing it. And it's a totally different team, and they are a totally different set of eyes. And I've had very good success, if you get past that point where the appraisal comes in low on the reconsideration of value, which is once again another unique part of the VA loan.
Why don't you, Vic? Why don't you explain exactly what that is? So we get a message from the appraiser. Hey, I'm not seeing the value. I'm invoking Tidewater. You have your 48 hours to get us additional information. They come back. They still don't see it. They bring it in $10,000, $50,000, whatever the number is low. Why don't you walk us through what the reconsideration of value and what that actually means? Because I don't think a lot of veterans even have ever got to that point or know what that process is. And their agents and sellers considering taking an offer don't understand that that's not even an option with any other loan program. So if you could walk us through it, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's an actual formal process. There's actually a process you go through. Reconsideration of value can come in 3 different forms. You can, and those are all laid out. I'm not going to go into detail on what those 3 different things are, but you kind of look at it. And I just had a very successful reconsideration of value. I closed on Monday. The appraisal, I'll use that as an example. Appraisal is a unique property. It wasn't a great homestead, but it was on several acres of land. There's barns and several horses and everything. And it came in 80,000 under value.
That can be a small problem
on a $385,000 loan. That's a third off. And so I've got this property. The sellers obviously are motivated to sell, but they're not going to do it 80,000 under. So I went to the listing agent. I asked her, hey, how did you determine this value? And she sent me the comps that she'd used. I looked at all the comps, and then I actually did a home canary report on it and got my own comps. And then, I picked 3 of those, and then I just wrote up a case of why I thought the value was different. And here's the thing: I didn't ask for 385. I didn't ask for the 80,000. I asked for 325 because that's what the realtor that I talked to. She goes, "This is what they'll settle. This is what they'll settle for. Your buyer will get it for 50,000 under. They're going to get 30,000 more than what they have right now, and they will take that." And so I went, did all this work, and I gave to the VA, and I asked for a reasonable amount. I asked for 325, which is still 50,000 under list, and they gave me a $30,000 increase, exactly what I asked for. Boom, we closed it the next day. So that's the reconsideration of value process. So you can do it either just by looking at comps and all the adjustments. You can do it by just something that's more of a narrative form, like, hey, this thing's got great views, it's in a much better neighborhood than the comps, and you can do a narration, but you still have to ask for a specific amount. I think that's the biggest mistake people do when they do a reconsideration, is they don't ask for a specific amount. What do you want them to come up with? So one thing I learned in the Navy, hey, you give the senior officer the answer that you want in your memo, and all he's got to do is sign it. That'll go a lot better than him actually having to make a decision on, well, let's see, what should I do here? Well, what you need to do is sign the bottom on exactly what the recommendation was. And that's the best way to get that done.
And in that process, it's the only one where a buyer can give some sort of narrative of, why do I think it's worth this? In any other process, no one even asks or cares. Mm-hmm. It's like, cool, buyer, you and the 9 other people bidding on that think it's worth X, but the appraiser thinks this. You can actually give a little narrative of, I'm not just a crazy person wanting to overpay for a home. I'm out in the market. I'm shopping. This is what I think it's worth with all of the factual data. You have any interesting experiences with reconsiderations, Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, thankfully, it's not been something that we've seen a whole lot of lately. My screen is completely freezing up. Okay. It's not something that we really see a whole lot of. It's pretty rare that we actually even go into Tidewater. Does it happen from time to time? It does. I have not personally had to submit a whole lot of reconsideration of values, but it is really cool though, when you do submit one, that they will actually take the veteran's opinion of the value of that property, because truly at the end of the day, how much is a property worth? It's worth what someone is willing to pay for it. And right. It could be person A may only be willing to pay this, person B may be willing to pay, $50,000 more, but that's how the sales price is determined on every product basically in the world. So, what is somebody willing to pay for it? And that's, at the end of the day, that's what a home should be worth too. But of course, the lenders want to know that the money that they're giving is actually supported by the value that's, with comps and all of that. So I love that with the reconsideration of value process, they do have the ability to go in and say, hey, this is why my property is worth this. And this wasn't taken into consideration. And, it's got this and it's got that. And sometimes what those particular things mean to one party may be different than what it means to another party. A VA appraiser may look at it and say like, oh, there's a barn over here, but we're not really putting much value into that. Whereas for this family, maybe they have horses and that's what their kids are passionate about. And so for them, there's a ton of value in that. That's not very heavily weighed in the appraisal. So I love that they can put their own opinion into what this home is worth and what it means to them, and that it can actually translate into dollars in the appraised value, because you don't have that with any other program.
Let me throw a caution in here on that though. So there are like I said, the different kinds of ROVs. I've had much greater success on having one where I actually fill out a grid and actually make arguments for specific things. Hey, you didn't bracket. So bracketing a property is, if you have a $300,000 property, all the comps can be 250, 290, 270, and hey, it comes in at 270.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, no kidding. All your comps were below that. So, that's one of the big arguments I'll make. Hey, you didn't bracket it. Here's some properties you're going to bracket it. And then, I want it to come in at this value right here. I've not had as great success doing the narrative where it's like, hey, this thing had a great view. This thing was on unique, land with, these boulders and mesas and these, unique rock formations and things like that. So if you are going to do an RV, I'm kind of the point now where I don't generally try to stay away from a narrative one, because those are not as successful. I think the guys with VA just like to have, hard data where they can hang their hat on it. Yeah, this guy's making a good point here, check, and then sign off on it.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I think if that's absolutely going to always be your first choice, is just to go to that. Just these are the facts and these are the comps that are out there. Because I mean, I had one just recently where the appraised value came in a lot less than we thought it was going to come in at. And the comps that they used, there were far better comps in the neighborhood. And so once we graphed those and sent them over, it was hands down. It wasn't even an argument. We got exactly the value that we were looking for. And, not that we were looking for initially, but it was a lot better than what we got from the appraisal. And it was just based on facts. It didn't have any heart in it at all. So, but just knowing that you can put that heart in there and that is an option, it's just one more option that those veterans have.
The kind of last thing I'd like to throw in here, Josh, just since we're kind of talking about realtor relationship, getting your offer accepted, is that when you get a reputation that you go to fight for, not just your buyers, but you're actually fighting for the sellers too when you're trying to get a reconsideration, because you're trying to get them more money, because you're trying to keep the deal together, but making a necessity virtue out of necessity, you're also fighting for the sellers. If agents know that you do that, and word gets around on who does what, and if you fight hard for that, when you call up that agent next time with another offer, and they know that you're going to do that, it helps your reputation, especially if you're using a local lender that knows the local agents and such, and they're like, oh yeah, last time I talked to this guy, he kind of went the extra mile and got this done. So that really helps a lot as far as that you go to bat for both seller and buyer.
So we've still got a number of things here to go through, but for any of you that are watching live, anyone who may be out in the group, we're here to answer questions. We definitely want to transition to that. If no questions show up, we'll just keep talking. But if you have a question, anything VA related, anything mortgage or real estate related, we've got a room full of experts here ready to answer your questions. So if you have them, go ahead, throw them up in the chat, and we'll definitely get to them. With that, I kind of want to circle back. It seems like, so we jump in, everything here that we've talked about so far is appraisal related. What is the appraisal? How does it work? What happens if it comes in low? What are the minimum property requirements? It seems like to sellers, that's their biggest concern. If you have 5 offers and the best one or the highest is a VA offer, they immediately go to, well, I've got a 30% down conventional loan over here, and they have the ability to make up that gap. So people think that sellers have some sort of bias against VA loans, and to a degree, we've gone through that, and there is that. But don't you guys primarily feel like, from a seller's perspective, if you can tell them all 5 of those offers are going to close in one day and the money's going to be there, they're going to look and say, give me the most money. They're seeing, or they're believing, that there's a less certain path to that payday with a VA loan, primarily related to not having the money down. So most of our buyers, our VA buyers, do go zero down. If you look at the numbers, Vetted VA does a great job working with Polygon and going through those numbers, but we know the LTV generally is close to 100% on most of these. What, from a realtor's perspective, or for you guys as a lender, what additional things can we be doing to maximize the chances of getting an offer accepted? So Diana, when you're writing an offer for a VA client, what are some of the things that you can do? And these things aren't even in this market. These aren't necessarily specific to VA loans. This is just, how do you go to bat for your client and stress to the seller and their agent what are the strengths of this offer and why should they accept yours out of the pile of offers they're getting?
Right. So first of all, we want to try to make sure that we address what the seller needs. Terms are just as equal as important as prices. So talking to the listing agent, seeing if they have a specific timeline that they want to move by, if they, what is the seller situation? Are they buying something else? Do they need a delayed occupancy? Do they have something specific that will sway them, one way or the other? I am in an active duty base area. So we go almost by timelines in every single offer. The seller has to be out by this day. Sellers moving overseas, sellers coming in from overseas, and you have to meet that occupancy. So it is a fine art to try to get everything that the seller wants while it's still working for the buyers. Going back to the comps a little bit, I know we already touched on this, but I wanted to just throw this out there for anybody that's listening or watching. Once you put in an offer and it's accepted, I try to set myself up for success and my buyers up for success. So I watch the comps or the properties that are under contract in that same area, and we'll call the agents and ask them and say, hey, when is this closing? They might tell you, they might not. Has this gone through appraisal? Did you have any issues? What's going on? When are you guys expected to close? So I keep tabs on every single comp within that immediate area, comparable to the property that I'm trying to purchase for my clients. That way I'm prepared. I'm prepared to have something to show the appraiser if I need it. Another misconception that I wanted to go back to, the Tidewater, the Reconsideration of Value. A lot of agents will think that it takes months, because I think once they hear about a government process, they automatically think that it takes forever. So the Reconsideration of Value for me, I felt like probably has taken max about 4 days. It's not months, it's not weeks. And if it comes back, a Tidewater does not work, then we submit that Reconsideration of Value, just like Vic was saying. We are also, serving the seller as well, trying to get them more money. And trying to come to, an agreement between both parties. Now, occupancy is one of them. Again, going back to what the terms of the offer, maybe shortening your option period in the area that I'm in is already predetermined. It's already written in the contract, but I know in some other states it's not like that, and it is different. So if there is an option period, can we shorten that? Can we do an appraisal gap? Can we contribute something to make the seller's life easier? I cannot tell you how many times I have just offered to clean the house for the seller, and they're like, oh my gosh, yes, please. I'm just going to move and go. That offers value, and it's just so small. It's a common courtesy that it helps. It puts you, up front, just having to having a phone call with the other agent to just advocate for your buyer. Same with the lender. Asking the lenders to call and advocate for our mutual client. Tell them how strong the file is. Call them, and tell them what you can about the file, and just make them feel more comfortable. Having that warm, fuzzy feeling is what we're looking for.
Diana, you said something that's super important there. Is in this process, relationships. And I don't mean relationships, hey, this is an agent I've worked with before. There's an element of that, of having a reputation of people that you've worked with before. But you talked about reaching out and finding out what's important to the seller. Is that not a big part of saying, you don't know until you talk to the other side, what do they want? Do they want a rent back? Do they want to be able to just leave some junk in the garage? There's any number of things that, by reaching out and finding out what their hot buttons are, you're showing that you and your client actually care about collaborating on a process that we all want to get to the same thing. My clients want to buy this house. You want to get out of the house. The agent wants to have a successful transaction, a 5-star review. But the relationship piece of that is hugely important. And I talk to realtor friends of mine all the time. They're like, I'm blown away. We got 22 offers on this property. 5 of the agents even called to follow up on their offers or to find out what was important.
Right.
Is that what you're seeing in your market?
Yes. I mean, as a listing agent as well, I get 10 to 15 offers, and I can count on one hand the people that actually call me and advocate for their client. Sometimes they just send the contract, and I'm like, where is your pre-qualification letter? I try to vet every single offer for my client. I ask for proof of funds, and when I send an offer over, that's what I do as well for my buyers. Here's the proof of funds. We're covering an appraisal gap up to X amount. We're doing a cover letter. Seller doesn't want to move the nasty pool. Fine, I got it. I'll donate it. I dismantle it myself. We're on our way. So just trying to come up with out of the box ideas to help the seller. A lot of our sellers, there's a lot of turnover here because we're in an active duty base area. They don't want to deal with a lot of stuff. They have a lot of stuff in their hands already. They're moving overseas. They can't even take their appliances. So now they're looking for somebody to buy it or, try to dispose of it. So we're there to solve the problems that the seller has. How can I help your seller so that my buyer and your seller can, come to an agreement on this and we can all be happy?
And for those of you that are watching either now or if you watch it later and just watching the recording, this piece is really, really important. One of the questions, I'm sure Vic, Michelle, and Diana, when we're moderating, a version of this question comes up almost every day that I'm moderating is, I don't feel like my agent's working for me. They show me some listings or we saw a few houses or they set me up on a search. Like this is what it takes in this market. In a lesser market where homes are sitting and lingering, maybe your realtor can send you a list and just shoot over an offer. But like it is that relationship. It's going above and beyond. It's demonstrating your professionalism, demonstrating your caring for the other agent and their client. What do you want? What do you need out of this transaction? How do we put it together? And it kind of shocks me when I talk to agents and I find out how few agents work with this. We talk all the time. Historically, we would say it's an 80-20 industry. 80% of, and it's not, this isn't realtors,
90-10.
mortgage people.
Not 90-10.
And I would say exactly that. A mentor of ours says it's fractal. So it's 80-20 of 80-20. So it's worse than 90-10. It's really, you're looking for the 20% of the 20%, the top 4 or 5% of people. I guarantee if you interview 5 agents, most of them are not going to tell you they do what Diana's talking about doing here. And it is critical and essential for getting an offer accepted. And it's not all that different for us on the loan side. So why don't we use that as a transition? Michelle and Vic, what are you guys doing to do similar things on the loan side to get those offers accepted?
I was going to say that, Diana and realtors do 80% and then the 20% that I put in, but I'm not going to do that because 75%, 25, 90, 10, I don't know. The big thing that I contributed, and I tell all my realtors this that I work with, is before they ever put an offer in, I've got the pre-qual done. Pre-qual means that, I pulled their credit, I've got their certificate of eligibility, I have their documents. And here's the big one. I tell them, when you're putting an offer in, give me the address, give me the numbers. I'm going to put it on the pre-qual. I'm going to run AUS, the automated underwriting system, to make sure that it approves. And then I give them a pre-qual for that specific amount. And I do it on a Saturday at 5 o'clock or a Sunday at noon, whenever they need it. I work on the weekends because that's when the realtors work. That's when most of my clients are working. You might find me skiing on Tuesday, but Saturday, Sunday, yes, I'm definitely doing that. And then here's the other one. You talk to your realtor, to the Diana Dominguez of the world. Hopefully you can find someone like that, and you edify them, you edify their clients. You call up the listing agent, you're like, hey, you got an offer from Diana Dominguez. She's one of the top agents here in Colorado Springs. Glad we got the offer in. I'm the lender for that, and just want to tell you about these perfect clients that I have. And I don't obviously state it quite like that, but I tell them, hey, this I've got them underwritten. The only thing I really need to do, if your property can pass underwriting, we're done. And by the way, do you need this done in 14 days or 10 days, or do you need is the house empty? She's talking about knowing what's going on. If the house is empty, they probably want to sell it faster. And so we have that conversation. And so the realtors I talk to are really kind of blown away that that I'm calling on a Sunday, or a Saturday or whatever it is, that I know about the address, and that I've edified the realtor, I've edified the borrower, and they feel really good about the whole offer then. And I have a pretty good success rate with, and of course I have the honor of working with some really good realtors, some top rated realtors here that know how to write a contract. But that's kind of the icing on the cake, to give that call, edify them, edify the buyers, edify the contract, and tell them that if their property meets my the standards, it's going to pass.
One of the pieces that's interesting to me, I know in other parts of the country this is foreign to loan officers, but in California it's very common that the agents that we work with, when they have a listing, they'll have us cross-qualify the buyers. Generally not every time, but if it's a little dicey and they're concerned with what we have and what we're doing, we'll get a look at it. And it is amazing to me on the loan officer side. We talk about 80-20 or 96-4. The junk that these loan officers will give and will pass off as a pre-approval package. Like, judging by your work, what you have provided the agent to see, they have no way to conclude anything other than you're not very good at your job, you don't pay attention to details, and you're not going to be super fun to work with. So along those lines, Michelle, what does a pre-approval package look like that when you put a package together, you have a fully pre-approved buyer, Diana is getting ready to go out and present the offer, what are you giving her to show your work, show what you've done, and what your buyer is going to be able to perform?
Honestly, it goes back to a lot of what Vic and Diana said. For a pre-approval letter, I am always willing to send them out pretty much any time of day, no matter where. I can send it right from my phone. The agents can jump in and they can update it on their own based on the parameters in the loan if they need to. But I think having that pre-approval letter that is incredibly current, like listed for this or issued the same day that they're making the offer, is really important, especially in this market where rates are rising. If you're an agent and you're looking at two offers and one pre-approval letter was issued at the beginning of February and one was issued yesterday, then you know that borrower that was issued yesterday is definitely going to be, pre-approved based on these standards, whereas somebody that got pre-approved back in February, they may not even be able to qualify anymore just based on the rates. So I think having that updated pre-approval letter is always important. I have probably issued more pre-approval letters in the last 2 or 3 months than I have in my entire career, I feel like, because we're constantly updating them for each individual property. There's a train going by. Sorry, it's just where my office is.
Your office is in an interesting area.
The downtown here has a train track that literally runs right through downtown, and it's right by my office. But it'll be gone in just a minute. But I think that really makes a huge difference, especially when you can put that address on there and everything, because they, in my market, we are a smaller market. I do know probably 80% of the agents around here. If I don't know them, it's probably because they're either really new and just got into the business, or they've been in the business a really long time and they just don't really do any work anymore, and they haven't for years. So I know a lot of the agents around here, which is always really helpful. And then I don't mind picking up the phone and calling them. I had an agent just the other day that called and they said, hey, we've got these offers that have come in, and we have one, and we really want to accept it from your borrower because it's the highest offer. It's the best contract that was, presented to us, but it's a VA offer. And I noticed that they're doing 100% financing, but it says that they're willing to cover an appraisal gap up to this amount. Are they actually going to be able to pay those funds? And so we had a really long conversation about that, because one, if I tell them that this is what they're pre-approved for and that they can cover an appraisal gap up to X amount, then it should be just as good as the rest of the pre-approval letter. But there's a lot of agents that'll look at that and think, oh, well, they're doing 100% financing, so they can't cover this appraisal gap. But it's so far from the truth, because the truth of the matter is that the majority of my veteran borrowers actually have more funds to put down than my conventional borrowers do. And I can't speak to as to why that is, but it's just the truth at the end of the day. And so we had a really great conversation just about VA loans in general. And yes, they can do 100% financing, and they can still cover that appraisal gap if it comes in at this the asking price versus what they're offering on the home. So I think a lot of it is just making sure that whoever that listing agent is really educated, them giving them all of the information that you legally can give them to show them how strong your buyer is, making those phone calls, not being afraid to reach out. There's no such thing as a weekend in the life of a strong loan officer, in my opinion. So we work around the clock, because if that's what it takes to get our borrowers in homes, and we've never been in a market the way it is right now, quite frankly. So if your lender is not willing to reach out to somebody on the weekend, if they're not willing to make a call or put those extra touches in there, then you might want to reconsider who you're working with, because that is, at the end of the day, that can make or break your scenario.
And Josh, we had a real short one on here. I know we need to get on the next subject, but the data supports that VA loans actually from offer accepted to closing have a higher percentage of conventional loans. So if you were to go with a lower percentage type of loan, go ahead and do that. I'd advise going with the higher percentage close rate.
Yep.
And that's what I tell all of the agents to say, listen, there's a misconception. VA is literally the most flexible program in terms of, if we look, the test that all four of us took, you're looking and you're like, there's a lot of gray area in here. But the benefit of that is where Fannie and Freddie, like, this is it. If you either meet it or you don't, even if it's a dumb guideline, it's black and white. And if you're on the wrong side of it, you're on the wrong side of it. I think both 2 or 3 of you said, hey, I reached out to the regional loan center and went through this. You can contact them and you go, hey, I have a veteran. I think they're a good risk. Here's what the situation is. Like, we don't have that with any other loan program. Those guidelines are black and white. So there's that. And then Michelle, you mentioned just a different version of exactly what Diana said. Relationships, the relationships you have with the realtors in the area, and being able to just follow up and give people information. And it seems overkill. So again, as an example, if you and Diana are working on a transaction together, she's reached out to that listing agent, had a conversation, and kind of felt them out. You've reached out, gone through all of the details, and it can be overkill. If you're a listing agent, you have 20 offers. Do you want to talk to 20 lenders and 20 realtors? No, you don't. But the good part of the conversation we just went through, you're not going to, because only 3 or 4 of them are even going to bother to try. So you get the opportunity to demonstrate, hey, if these guys do this in the hope of getting an offer accepted, what do you think they do when they actually have an offer accepted and are trying to close the deal? So
that's also why they always say, we talk about using a local lender, and obviously a realtor's got to be local, but a local lender. I'm licensed throughout Colorado, but pretty much, I think 95% of what I do is right here in El Paso County, maybe a couple up in Denver, maybe a couple, right in the county next to me up in the mountains. But, that's what having a local lender means, is that they have someone that already has relationships. So you're not going to get a headset jockey in some call center in Detroit that's going to be calling up your realtor to edify you on a Saturday evening if that's what's required, or Sunday afternoon.
And Vic, along those lines, what I was going to say is, we get this question all the time. There is a large call center that caters to veterans, and we get questions about them all the time in the group. If you're pre-approved by them, forget all the other negative things. They are not calling and doing these things. They're not working with your realtor in that way. They're trying to refer you to one of their realtors that will pay them a referral fee, and they're not working with you, you and your professional in this way. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to point out that, like, everyone likes to think there's an easy button or there's a big 24/7 lender that they can go to, but you're not getting this level of relationship and relational handling of your file.
Well, that answers a question a lot that comes up. It's like, hey, what do I have to do to get my offer accepted? That's a common theme. We moderate every single day. And the big thing is the team that you put together, that you have someone that doesn't try to talk you out of a VA loan, which means that they don't know how to sell a VA loan, find a different realtor, or a lender that isn't going to go to advocate for you, or that is in some other state, that doesn't work on the weekends. It doesn't work when your offer is being looked at. Those are huge things. And people ask, what kind of questions should I ask? Well, there are 2 right there, that you can ask to try to get your team together so that you get your offer accepted.
And even you say, like, when you're interviewing, I wouldn't want to ask someone, if you say, hey, do you call, if you're my lender, do you call him? I don't want to ask them that, because they're going to go, oh, it's important to him. Say yes. And say, ask them, well, what happens when I'm ready to write an offer? What do you do? And have them tell you what their process is.
You advocate for me. If I have to call a 1-800 number just to try to reach your lender's voicemail, that's not your person.
Voicemail with a Pakistani accent.
Yeah. It's just,
but it's it's a call. It's just a call center.
yeah, exactly. I mean, if I have to leave a voicemail on something that is, a time consuming for them to even just call you. I mean, if I have to call the 1-800 number just to talk to them, or just to talk to a voicemail or an answering machine or something, what am I expecting for my seller, or for my client? And when I do have an issue and I need answers quickly, when there's, a Tidewater issue, how quickly are they going to let us know that we need to, do something? You're just a loan number to them at some point.
Right. And does your lender even know about Tidewater? I mean, how many times have we heard, people that pop up and post in the group and they're like, oh, apparently like our appraisal went into Tidewater and nobody even notified any of the parties. And then they're putting information about these chats, and the loan officer's like, well, you didn't know that I needed to do anything with that. I mean, it's just, it's just like anything. There's great loan officers, there's good loan officers, there's mediocre ones, there's, ones that are, terrible. And there's great loan officers that work for some of these call centers, I have no doubt, but it's the affiliation with that company that could keep that potential borrower. It could be one of the best loan officers in the country. However, when an agent that doesn't know this person, or has, all they have to base things on are past experiences with this company, and they see that company name, they're not going to know who Joe Blow is, and it's not going to mean anything. But when they see the name of either a local lender, or someone that they've worked with in the past, or someone who submitted a really great pre-approval letter and called them and really went above and beyond, it can make all the difference in the world on getting that offer accepted.
Yes.
So we do have a couple questions here that have popped up. Before we jump over and take those, in wrapping up, in tips of getting a VA offer accepted, or any offer accepted in this market, anything that we haven't covered that you guys would like to throw out there?
No, I mean, one thing that I got the other day was someone questioned, and it was the same agent that called wanting to make sure that our borrower had enough funds to be able to pay for an appraisal gap. And she said, well, I know in the contract that it says that the sellers aren't going to have to pay any fees on this loan, but I did let them know up front that, there still would be some fees that they had to pay because they were the seller and it was a VA loan. And I was like, well, what are you basing that on? Because I wanted to hear what she came back to me with. And honestly, like, she is very familiar with the real estate industry. She's been in it for many, many years, used to be on the title side for a long time. And she was referring to really old, VA lending guidelines. And so I was, I got the great opportunity to be able to educate her and say, no, actually, this is the case, and went through that, the seller really actually shouldn't have to pay anything more on a VA loan than they do on any others. And so I think education, honestly, is the biggest piece in this, in VA lending. I mean, I was looking earlier. So on an FHA loan, in the FHA handbook, there's like 1,500 pages to the FHA handbook now. The VA combined the 26/7 now has, it's got 616 pages. So it is substantially more condensed, and there is a lot of gray area, like you talked about there, Josh. But educating these realtors on why the gray area can be good for the borrowers, letting them know these guidelines change just like any other loan. So what you knew about VA lending 10 years ago is not necessarily the case anymore. And so I think education is just a huge piece of it. And as lenders, it's a great opportunity for us to get out there and help educate them. For other realtors that do a lot of VA lending, I mean, don't ever be afraid to share this information. And if you're a borrower and you're listening, and as a part of Vetted VA, make sure that whoever you're working with is incredibly just well-versed in not only the loan, but in dealing with realtors and helping educate them, and that they're willing to go that extra mile for you.
So with that, let's jump in here to the first question. It relates back to the Tidewater. When we were talking about that, one of the viewers popped up, can I pay someone to help me debate the low appraisal? No. Any of you guys want to handle why that wouldn't be necessary, and who should be handling that for them?
Yeah, that's covered in the cost. So when you have a good lender, that's my job, is to go ahead and put that together. I talk to the realtors, talk to the look at the data and put that together. So that's not something that you have to pay someone. That's what your loan officer does. But that's part of the job description.
And you're probably working with the realtor or both of the realtors in that transaction.
Mm-hmm.
They're the experts in the area. Like Diana said, she's actually monitoring the comps that are on the market that haven't yet closed and may be able to tell us more about the market than what you would be able to know just from digging in the MLS or other databases.
Right. And you know what, it all goes back again to relationships. When we have these comps that are waiting to close and they're under contract, we can gain valuable information about, we're trying to stay ahead of the market, and trying to solve problems before they arise. And another thing that I wanted to say with the Tidewater and the reconsideration of value, just like Michelle pointed out, there's that, option to have the veteran advocate for themselves in the ROV process. And in my area, it's interesting how it affects people, because we have active duty military members and their families staying in hotels trying to find housing that they're trying, the offers that they're trying to win. And then something like this happens and they can put it into words, to the VA and to the the appraisals and all that stuff, and that email says, hey, this is actually costing us money, more money than we're fighting for here. So, this is what we are, what we're spending, we're probably looking at another 2 weeks in a hotel. So we're trying to all work towards a common goal, and having that option, no other loan gives you that option. And I love that, because this is all about the veteran. This is all for their benefit. And yeah.
And it's really surprising to me, the misconceptions on largely on the agent side. Most of us on this side, maybe a loan officer hasn't done a VA loan, so they're not intimately familiar with it, but you should know of these flexibilities. And just like you said, we don't have it with any other loan program. So it's really the exact opposite of what the perception is, that everyone should be like, this is awesome. I get to have input throughout the process, and I'm more likely to get a value close to my sale price with a VA loan than almost any other type of loan program. So with that, we have another one, and this is more of a loan question. We're gonna be building a house. Are there any special things that we should know with financing? Also, we've talked to a couple of lenders, and they do not do VA loans. Have you heard of lenders not wanting to do VA loans? They're in Idaho. So yeah, the answer is yeah. We probably all have heard of it. You guys want to talk about that, and maybe also talking about what building a house looks like, and even potentially a one-time close VA loan.
I'll go ahead and touch on that one. So there is a thing called the VA construction loan that just came out recently, in the last couple of years. I think I first heard about it about 5 years ago or so. But the VA construction loan allows you to buy the land and build the house all together. Now, a lot of people think, hey, I can't win in this market, so I'm just going to build my own house. Probably not the best way to go. To build a house, even with a VA loan, you got to have some reserves. You got to have some depth to your finances. So if you're scraping by, and you could do a VA loan, but you're like, I'm just going to build a house because it's easier. I'm going to buy some land and then build on it. That's actually a very, very expensive proposition. $25,000 for a sewer water hookup. City hookups. I mean, those things all add up. Now they're part of it, but you have to be pretty savvy on how to do that. And so hopefully, the people that don't look into doing VA construction loans either have some background in building or construction, or have built a house before, have been prior homeowners. I wouldn't recommend anybody that's a first-time home buyer going through a VA construction loan. It's a pretty arduous program, and it's not a great place to have a learning curve. Take it from me. My first construction was building my own house. The old one burned down, but so it wasn't anything of choice or anything. But still, I learned a lot of stuff, and I paid a lot of idiot taxes when I built that house. So it really helps you to have that kind of depth. Getting back to, can you do that in Idaho? Can you find somebody? Contact a vetted VA rep. If they don't do VA construction loans, they know someone nationally that would do a VA construction loan in Idaho. We have a lot of resources for that. Not every VA loan officer does VA construction loan. They're very, very time intensive. They take a lot of depth of knowledge. Not everybody has that. You actually have to take classes on, how to go through doing that. And it's a long process. So definitely it's a great program that is out there. I've talked to probably 100 people about a VA construction loan. And I've had one taker. because what they realize, oh wow, this is a lot more than I really thought.
Well, similarly, Vic, the logic, you totally get it. Like, it's funny, everyone thinks their market is unique. I almost said, well, in California, well, in any of the 50 states, the market is nuts right now, and it's hard to get an offer accepted. So these buyers, first-time buyers, are like, well, I mean, there's a piece of land over there, and it's been there for a while. I can get a reasonable price, and if I could build, then I can have a new house. But just like you said, long process, involved process. You have to have more financial wherewithal to get through that. So unfortunately, it doesn't work really well. And what I would say, I've flipped over 40 houses in the last 10, 15 years. And with that level of experience, I wouldn't want to get into building a house in this current market. The contractors are buried, so they get to charge a lot. They're not as fast as what they normally are. We've got supply chain issues and all that fun stuff. So it's certainly not meant to discourage anyone from building. If you have a good builder and you have experience and you have the financial depth, absolutely go ahead and do it.
Let me throw another thing in there. Big misconception too is that if you're doing a new construction through a builder in an established neighborhood, so I'm doing a new build, that's a totally different thing than the VA construction loan. VA construction loan is, I'm buying the land, I'm going and hiring a contractor, and I'm going to find the plans. I'm going to bring this all together at one point, and it's a 6-month process, and I'm going to have the loan approved up front, and then I'm going to start making payments and everything's done. That's the VA construction loan. If you just go to a new build development and you're going to buy a new build house where you get to go to the design center, pick out all the the tiles, the backsplashes, the cabinets, and all that, that's just a regular VA loan. You go there, you do that, you put a deposit down. Normally, it's not that much. They build the house. When it's done, you get your certificate of occupancy, and then you close on the loan, and then you occupy it just like any existing house. So, a big misconception. We answer a lot of questions about that as well. But just wanted to kind of make sure the differentiation was put out there.
Absolutely, because a regular new build, a builder's putting up a new development with 40, 50, 100 homes. You just put it under contract, and you use any lender can do the VA loan with that. So we don't have a ton of questions here before we let everyone go. Any other comments or thoughts that you guys have that you'd like everyone out there to know?
I did have one thing, if I could. I wanted to just kind of touch base on also repairs. We see a lot of those posts coming in. Should I waive my inspection? In good conscience, I wouldn't advise anyone to waive their inspection. However, what you can do to combat that would be prepared. Know what your deal killers are. Usually if you have, if you're going to a showing and it's 15, 20 minutes long, you usually would have access to, the furnace, see how old it is, see how the roof looks. Yes, you're not a general contractor, but at least you have an idea. Most of the big ticket items will have stickers. The furnace has stickers. The water heater has your stickers. So, it's more of a, technical or mechanical, part of the process here. But that's another way to try to see what you are comfortable with. If you know that furnace is going to need to be replaced in the near future and during your ownership, then you know how to budget or where to budget, or at least you have that knowledge going into it when you make that offer. That way there's no nothing that you could have known before will make you try second guess your the process. So that's something that I try to coach my clients on. Let's see what it looks like. Let's look at all of the elements. What do you think that you could do to this home so that it could be a good investment? Or do you have any feedback on the homes? And sometimes, even as the market is very sought after and very fast moving, sometimes it's just not the right house for them. And we'll continue to keep looking until we find it.
Vic, Michelle, any closing thoughts?
Well, I mean, the big thing is just make sure that you get it from the get-go. Hopefully what you can take away from this little talk we've had is kind of help you formulate some questions you have. So, before you go out and look at houses, you should have a lender. Obviously you have a realtor, but a lot of people kind of skip the lender part. But you want to have a lender that advocates for you and that knows your product that you have. And so make sure you interview a couple. I have no problem with people want to interview me with several others, because I know that the knowledge that we bring here with vetted VA is second to none. And you want someone that advocates for you, that understands the program, and has a proven track record. So those are the things you look at, not just make sure it's not just a someone that sounds good on the phone. Okay, so put your team together early.
Yes.
Yep, I agree. And just don't give up. That's the biggest thing right now too. Just because the first offer or the second offer isn't accepted, just, if it's in your heart to buy and that is what you want to do and need to do, just don't give up in this market, because there's a lot of other people that are in the same similar situation that are going out there and they're having to put in multiple offers before they get accepted. But as long as you have a team that's working on your behalf between your realtor and your lender, it will happen. It's just a matter of if, or sorry, not a matter of if, but a matter of when. and just, don't give up. Don't let the first, if somebody tells you no the first time, that's okay. Move on to the next one. That house wasn't meant for you. So.
No, 1,000%. Going back to what you had said, Vic, I never am going to be mad at someone who wants to shop for a loan, because what I can say, the people that I talk to after the fact who had the worst experience, who had the worst thing happen, are the ones that talk to one person, one lender, one realtor. You have no point of reference. Like I tell people, if you talk to 3 people, if you talk to 5 people and you don't choose to work with me, that's on me. I didn't give you the confidence that we had your best interests at heart more than anyone else does. So, if we lose 1 or 2 that way, I still feel better that the client shopped and has a frame of reference and knows what's out there and didn't get stuck with the first person or their cousin or their neighbor or their coworker who just got their real estate license or does loans on the side. I mean, we hear that all the time. We all laugh because, geez, probably once or twice a year you hear a horror story of, hey, my cousin just got their mortgage loan officer license, and so I feel like they need to do their first transaction. And here we are in the 11th hour and everything went to hell. Like,
hey, Josh, I've never ridden a horse before, so can you give me a horse that's not been ridden so we can start off equal?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's absolutely crazy. So it's been a great conversation. It's difficult, just like Michelle said, it's a difficult market for everyone, not just VA buyers, FHA buyers, conventional buyers. Everyone's having a hard time. Nothing worth doing is easy. So be tough, do your due diligence. And what you can see here, we do have somewhat of an easy button, more so on the lender side, because we've got really great lender coverage in the vetted VA group. We're adding realtors at a rapid clip, but you do want a local realtor. But the vetted experts are not the only people that are great at helping veterans get into homes. But there's a lot of people out there that have never worked with a VA loan, a VA buyer, VA financing. So whoever you're interviewing, whether it's one of the vetted pros or an outside expert or realtor or lender, make sure you ask them, how many VA loans have you done? How many VA buyers, how many buyers have you represented with VA financing? It doesn't mean that you need to just automatically exclude them, but it's a unique product. And I think you can see from the passion that these 3 have, that it's a unique product. And if you understand it, you should be able to use it to the veterans' advantage to reward them for what they did. So actually, it looks like Nathan says we have another question. Nathan, you wanna throw up the question? So, this is a good one. How about self-employed? What can I do to get pre-approved? So at the end of the day, self-employed is only different in the sense of how they get their income. Michelle, you want to talk about how you get a self-employed borrower, how that conversation is going to vary and what you need to do differently with them?
Sure. So any of my self-employed VA borrowers, the first things that I'm going to ask for after I pull that certificate of eligibility, or at least attempt to pull it in, is I'm going to ask for their tax returns, because I'm going to want to look at those and evaluate those. And we've got formulas that we plug all the numbers into, and we're going to look, we can come up with that same, the income the same way that we would if we were to look at your pay stubs if you were a W-2 borrower. So just because you're self-employed, it's, is there a little bit more documentation that you're going to have to provide? Yes, there is. But, I think it's just like with anything, you own your own business. And so there's a benefit that comes with that. But when you go to get a mortgage, you're going to have to provide a little bit more paperwork. The biggest thing is you're going to have to provide those tax returns. You may have to answer some questions that, a borrower that's a W-2 borrower doesn't have to answer. But typically, if you're working with a good loan officer, the fact that you're self-employed should not hold you back in any way from getting a VA loan.
The big problem on self-employed comes if you're like, hey, I'm getting out of the military and I'm gonna start my own welding business or start my own
Sure.
XYZ business. that in that case, nobody can help you. You have to have a track record, because anything where you know, I don't know what the percentage is, a large percentage of businesses fail in the first couple of years. So what we want to see is that you have 2 years history. So like Michelle was asking for the 2 years of tax returns, that's because you have to have your business on there for 2 years before we can use that for income. Once you have those 2 years, it's not a problem. It's very easy to do that analysis. It takes a bit more work, but it's no more problem getting that approved than it is a W-2 person.
Right. And having said all that, when you are self-employed, there's a lot of things that you can write off. So, in your first year of being self-employed, if you're considering that you want to buy a home after you've had your business for 2 years, don't be afraid to go ahead and reach out to a lender early and have them say, hey, this is where my tax returns were this year. Is there anything I need to do different next year? Should I change some things? And we're not going to give you tax advice, but we can give you information from a mortgage perspective and say, hey, well, last year you wrote off all these expenses, and at the end of the day, this is all that we can use for your income. For you to be able to purchase the home that you want, we're going to need to see an income of around this amount. And then at least you have an idea of where you need to head in the next year, in your second year of business. So it's never too soon to reach out as a self-employed borrower, whether you're ready now, whether you're going to hit that 2-year mark next year. But, if there's somebody out there that is self-employed that wants more information on that, reach out to your lender sooner rather than later, because you can't, can you go back and amend taxes? You can. Is it a huge red flag across the board in mortgages with the IRS, everybody? Absolutely. So, you want to make sure that you're showing the income that you will need to be able to purchase that home. And I think that's probably one of the number one things that people that are self-employed start to run into is, one, either you don't have enough time in having your business, or two, you don't show enough bottom line income that we're going to actually be able to use for the mortgage purposes, because what you brought into your business and what we can use for your income for your business at the end of the day are not the same numbers.
And that's usually the question behind this question. Well, hey, I'm self-employed. I heard it's hard for me. Well, it's not hard for a self-employed person. It's different in that you have the ability to deduct a lot of expenses that an employee can't. And when you take that benefit, you might say, hey, I made $125,000 last year. Oftentimes, when you send Michelle that tax return, yes, your business brought in $125,000. At the bottom line, you made $42,000. So it's important. And what she was saying in terms of starting early, we're right here before tax time. Every time this year, I end up with 2, 3, 4 self-employed borrowers. They're like, can we look at my tax return before we file it? And you go through and you go, there's no law that says you have to take every deduction available to you. You can overpay your taxes if you choose to. So it's again, we're not giving you tax advice. We're saying, hey, your gross, your top line income was plenty, but if you claim that you had all those deductions, that bottom line's not going to get you the house that you want.
That's right. Don't expect to not pay taxes into the government based on your income and then get a government loan.
Exactly.
They want to see that income and those taxes being paid.
Okay, so hey, we have another question. I think they were holding out on us. They waited until we said, hey, we're going to go for this week, and then now the questions popped up. So this one here, my wife and I are in Parker, Colorado, somewhere that Vic may be familiar with, and currently going through the pre-approval process. I retire at the end of June. We're in a tough situation with rates climbing and waiting for retirement/disability rating to kick in. Also have a job offer that won't take effect until July. What advice could you provide? Buy a house with current lower rates, or wait until disability rating to waive the funding fees?
Let me jump on that one. If you have a job offer that starts within 60 days of closing and you're starting July, if you're closing if you go on a contract here in April, you're closing in May, June, July, that's within 60 days, you can do that loan all day long. And then also, if you're getting retirement, we can actually run a retirement estimator. You can get one from the Navy, or I didn't know if he's Navy or Army, or Parker, probably Army. But you can get a retirement estimator, and that'll show how much you're going to get for retirement. We can actually put that through and get that approved as well. So you're not able to use your disability because you're not going to have that disability rating, but we can definitely use your retirement. We can use your current job offer.
But if that disability rating, you've already started the process and it's in process, and you later have your disability rating kick in, you can get that funding fee refunded as long as you're in process at time of application.
It goes by the effective date, and the effective date is going to be the date of retirement. So if I'm a retired guy and I put in a disability rating now and it gets awarded in a year, and in the meantime I go buy a house, I can get that awarded back because my effective date is the date I put it in. If you're retiring, the effective date of your disability is going to be the date of your retirement, and so that's going to be the earliest that you can get that funding fee waived.
So for him, since he's not already retired, the retirement date and the disability date will be further into the future, and he'll be okay.
Yeah. The effective date's gonna be the day after you your last day of active duty.
And they did follow up and confirm it was Navy. I think you were crystal
Okay,
ball.
go Navy.
You knew it was a Navy serviceman when you started answering the question. Okay, so this time I think for real, I don't think we have any more questions, but just again, leave with the thought that relationships matter, relationships of the professionals that you're working with, that they work well together. Your realtor and your lender are working well together. Your realtor has good relationships in the community, and they all have a good relationship with you and with the VA loan process. So keep your head up. Keep trying. If you're getting offers not accepted, make sure your team is doing all of the things that we talked about to help you get those offers accepted. It's definitely worth it. So stick with it and check back in with us next week. We'll be back next Tuesday with a new group of experts and a new topic, and we'll be waiting for more questions.
Thanks a lot, Josh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Ciao.